What is up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point. Once again, the NCAA Tournament is in full swing. The first round is officially over, as we are now into the second round. And the second round actually has already begun in terms of yesterday. 4 teams advanced to the Sweet 16, but 4 teams will be leaving and going home. Who are those 4 teams? And how about some of these matchups that happened yesterday? I was a little surprised to see some of these matchups and their final result. But who emerged victorious and who will be taking the next flight home? Let's find out on this edition of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Welcome everybody to another edition of Set Point. Once again, this is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, and I owe some of y'all an apology. I thought I had stuff to take care of, so I couldn't go on at 11 a.m., and then I thought I was going to go on at 1 p.m., and I still had stuff to do. So, for those of you that I kept waiting in the dark, I truly apologize to you all. But I am here now with another episode of Set Point, and I'm very excited for this episode because now we are down to 32 teams. The first round is officially complete, baby. Let's go! Alright, now let's recap the first round matchups from yesterday, or from the first round. First off, let's go with Baylor and Sacred Heart. This was, to me, this was no surprise. Baylor took down Sacred Heart in straight sets. Yeah, no surprise. Baylor's the number 1 overall seed. They're not losing in the first round. Come on, man. Alright, next up is Stephen F. Austin and USC. USC sweeps Stephen F. Austin. Now, I did predict this was actually going to happen. However, I didn't think USC was going to sweep him. I thought it was going to have to go 4 or 5, especially with how USC's matchups panned out in the Pac-12. Like, more times than not, they were always going 4 or 5 with most of their opponents, whether they were winning or losing. So I was a bit surprised USC swept away Stephen F. Austin, especially since Stephen F. Austin had 31 wins and only 1 loss, which is darn right impressive. So hats off to USC for pulling off that victory. And, if you're hearing this, Larry B, if you're hearing this, the Trojans got the dub. Kalia Lanier was spectacular as always, but the person that truly stood out was Brooke Botkin. She hasn't really been on the floor for USC all that much, so to see her back was really good. It was very good to see her back. I don't know. I'm not going to go into too much detail about what's happened to her. Could be injury, but it's good. But Brooke Botkin, when healthy, really helps carry the load for USC. So big ups to USC for that matchup. USC will play Baylor tonight in the second round. That's going to be an interesting matchup. Yasonia Presley versus Kalia Lanier. Baylor has pretty much been near perfect all season. Their only loss was to Texas, which, they're the number 2 seed. But, I'll be interested to see how USC fares against Baylor. If USC plays the way they did last night, maybe they could pull an upset, But if I'm being realistic, I gotta pick Baylor for this one. I'm picking Baylor to advance to the Sweet 16. I have nothing but love for USC, but I don't see them getting out of it. I don't see them pulling off the big upset. But I could be wrong. Alright, next up is Marquette versus Dayton. Marquette swept away Dayton, and then Purdue swept away Wright State, as Marquette and Purdue will be facing each other in the second round. I'm going to take Purdue for this one. I'm taking Purdue for this one just because Purdue has just been on a tear as of late, and I think being in the Big Ten really benefits them. Marquette had a good run. I think they can hang with Purdue. This one was very tough to pick. I kind of wanted to pick Purdue, but Purdue does really well on its home floor, and I think they're just a little bit a bigger cut above Marquette. I think Marquette will hang with Purdue. I don't think they'll get swept, but I just think Purdue is just going to overmatch them, especially since Purdue has some pretty good wins, especially against Nebraska. Whew. All right, next up, number 9, Kentucky swept away Southeast Missouri, and Michigan swept away Southern Kentucky. Now the second round matchup will be Kentucky versus Michigan. I gotta go with Kentucky for this one. I think Kentucky has shaken off its bad losses, especially losing to Texas A&M. So Kentucky, I don't think Michigan will go down that easily, but I think Kentucky is just gonna take him to school, and especially since it's at Kentucky, you can't beat Kentucky. It's tough to beat Kentucky at Kentucky, and Michigan comes from the ever so tough Big Ten, but they just don't have the Mustangs, or in this case the Wolverines, to just get the win over Kentucky. I think Kentucky has a little bit more in the tank, and it's shown all season, especially sweeping Florida in the season series in SEC play. Next up, we have South Carolina taking down Colorado State in 5 sets. They even had to dodge a match point. And Washington sweeping away Winthrop after losing after a tight first set. Washington just straight up just slices and dices past Winthrop. I was very surprised to see South Carolina pulling the upset against Colorado State. Colorado State only had one loss going into that match, and that was against Cal. And honestly, I really thought Colorado State was going to have a deep run. They were one of the hotter teams, and they had such a great senior class. But to lose to South Carolina, man, oh my gosh. I was very surprised. And, but to dodge a match point like that is very impressive. And also South Carolina comes from the ever so tough SEC, home to Texas A&M, Florida, Kentucky, and a bunch of other tough teams. I guess South Carolina just was, a big reason why South Carolina won that one is because the SEC is just a big Power 5 conference, with teams like Florida, Kentucky, Texas A&M, LSU's kind of up there as well, and then South Carolina. And as for Colorado State, the Mountain West Conference just isn't, it's not up there in terms of Power 5 conferences. It's just not that good. It's decent, but it's not good. It's not comparable to Pac-12. It's not Pac-12 material or Big Ten material. So thinking about it, I'm not overly surprised that South Carolina pulled the upset, but I think I was a bit surprised that Colorado State, coming in with just one loss and coming in with a very talented senior class, just straight up laid an egg. I wouldn't say lay an egg. They lost in 5, and it's always tough to lose that match. As for Washington, they shook off a slow start, and then they straight up just beat Winthrop. They took them to the shed. They took them to the dog pound. And Washington and South Carolina will be facing each other in the second round. So that's it for the top right-hand bracket. We're going to go to the bottom or top left-hand bracket. We're going to go to the bottom left-hand bracket, where we have Nebraska sweeping away Ball State. Ball State had that miracle run in their conference tournament, but Nebraska is just too good. I know they don't have any seniors, but they're just too good. You just can't you can't take down a finalist from last year that easily. You just can't. Next up, this one was a little bit of a surprise, but Missouri just trounced University of Northern Iowa. Idaho, I don't know. Missouri, I totally forgot about Missouri. I think they're also a team from the SEC. I totally forgot that Missouri was also up there. It was just a pick 'em between UNI and then Missouri, and then Mizzo they just took him to the shed. I don't think UNI even cracked 15 points, let alone in any of the sets, let alone 20 points. So that was very impressive for Missouri. Missouri will play Nebraska in the second round. Now for San Diego versus Washington State. This wasn't a surprise. San Diego is really talented, and they're playing some of their best volleyball as of late. Grace Froling, the freshman opposite and reigning West Coast Conference Freshman of the Year, had a big game as she had a new career high in kills, and she also did her thing with her Grace aces. So I wasn't too surprised that San Diego beat Washington State. They did slip up in the second set, but they more than made up for it in sets 3 and 4. And as for Hawaii, they beat Northern Colorado in 4 sets. The first 2 sets were tight as Hawaii had to come from behind to take down Northern Colorado in the first set. And then Northern Colorado kind of stole that second set against Hawaii. But Hawaii just pulled out the big guns. They just pulled out the big guns with their amazing offense, like Brooke Van Sickle and pretty much, yeah, it was the third and fourth set was just not close, and Noreen Iazia just was straight up dishing it out like ice cream, and her serves are just deadly, man. I've already said it. Noreen Iazia's serves are like basically like cannonballs coming at like 100 miles per hour, and that's not over exaggerating. So Hawaii will face San Diego in the second round. Next we have Texas A&M against St. John's. I already talked about this. I wasn't too surprised that Texas A&M beat St. John's. St. John's had that great run in the Big East, but ran into a buzzsaw against the Aggies. And Rice took down Oklahoma, which also wasn't a surprise. And those two faced off in the second round, and I will get into that matchup a little bit later. But for right now, we'll get into UCLA versus Notre Dame. UCLA swept away Notre Dame, which was no surprise. Mac May had a field day, as well as Savvy Simo, Emily Ryan offensively, and Kelly Berry was just a beast at libero. So UCLA is back in the tournament. They're back. All you Mike Sealy haters, y'all can be quiet. Anyway, as for Illinois State and Wisconsin basically took down Illinois State in straight sets, and Wisconsin and the UCLA will face each other in the round of 16 tonight, so it should be an interesting matchup. Now let's go to the top right-hand bracket. Stanford took down Denver in straight sets. I like Denver considering they won their conference tournament on their home floor, but they only won that because South Dakota State was upset by Omaha in the semifinals. So I think that loss spoke more for basically Omaha and South Dakota State was just being the more unpredictable matchups and more unpredictable results right there. So just goes to show you that postseason play, anything is possible. So Stanford swept away Denver. Now this one was a very interesting match, and it was a very exciting match. Georgia-Cal Poly. Georgia was up 2-0 in the match, and then Cal Poly just turned the tables on them and reverse swept them. I was very impressed with how Cal Poly just was resilient, and they just straight up gutted it out against the Bulldogs. I was looking at that match, and I was seeing that they were down 2-0. It's like, oh, this isn't good. But then Cal Poly just turned it on. Maya Dvoracek just was Maya Dvoracek, and Madeline Mercer was also Madeline Mercer in the middle. Cal Poly just looked like they were playing more loose, relaxed, and free, even in Maples Pavilion, as Cal Poly took down Georgia and will move on to the second round against Stanford. Fun fact, the Big West Conference, all teams from the Big West Conference in the NCAA Tournament each won their first round game, which was very impressive. So big ups to the Big West. Yeah, it's very impressive. Not bad for a team, for a conference that's not really a Power 5 conference. So next first round matchup was Utah-Illinois. This was a very exciting match, and it was one of the tougher ones to predict. Utah barely got past Illinois. They were able to squeak by him in 5 sets. I think the fifth set was 18-16. It was Pac-12 versus Big Ten, 2 Power 5 schools, and Utah just brought it, man. And they even had a couple players make history in that match, so which we'll be going over pretty soon. Oh heck, I might as well just tell you all. Danny Drews and Bree Doherman both made history for Utah in that match. So big ups to those two, and big ups to Utah. They will be moving on to the second round. And as for who Utah will play, they will play BYU, who beat New Mexico State in straight sets, which is no surprise. BYU is young, but they were not going to lose to New Mexico State. Come on. No offense to the Western Athletic Conference, and especially Cal Baptist. But I really, BYU does not lose that easily. BYU is such a strong team, So BYU and Utah in the second round, that's going to be an interesting matchup. I actually should be making my picks, but I'll go over the second round matchups a little later. After I recap the first round matchups. All right, next first round matchup was Penn State and Princeton. Penn State swept away Princeton. No surprise there. Ivy League versus Big Ten. That's basically wood and sword versus a buzzsaw. So, yeah. Penn State was just too much for them, man. They were too much. Now, as for who Penn State will play, they will face Towson. Towson took down American in 4 sets. This was one of the more tougher ones to predict. Towson, I didn't know what to expect from Towson. And, American played in a very competitive conference where Colgate was their stiff competition. But Colgate was also upset in the American Athletic Conference and semifinals, and American pretty much just swept their opponent in the conference finals. So to me, I think this was more so of Towson being a little bit more resilient than American. So those are one of those pick'ems matchups. So there's that. Penn State and Towson will face each other tonight. Now, as for Cincinnati and VCU, this was another tough one to predict. I picked Cincinnati for this one, and I think I totally knew that Cincinnati was going to win, considering the American. Because I'm sorry. Did I say the American Athletic Conference? I think it's just the American conferences. The American Athletic Conference is what Cincinnati's in. So, yeah, Cincinnati played in the very tough and competitive American Athletic Conference. I forget which conference American's in. I think it's American something conference. Either way, or no, it's the Patriot. I think it's the Patriot League. Patriot, American, I don't know. But either way, Cincinnati took down VCU. Cincinnati in 4, I believe it was 4 sets. Cincinnati, I knew they were going to win. They've been battle tested. VCU, they just didn't have. It just wasn't in the cards for them. They played in a pretty competitive being I believe it was the Northwestern Conference. I'm not entirely sure about that. It's the one with Loyola of Chicago, but VCU they just didn't have what it takes to take down Cincinnati. So Cincinnati moves on to the second round, where they'll play the winner of Pittsburgh and Howard. Pittsburgh beat Howard. They hit 392, somewhere in the 390s, and swept away Howard. No surprise there. Pitt is really on a roll. This could be one of the favorites to possibly win it all this year. I don't know if a whole lot of teams can take down Pitt. There are a few teams that could take down Pitt, but I'm not entirely sure. So, we'll see what happens between Cincinnati and Pitt, but I think Pitt's going to pretty much have a deep playoff a deep NCAA tournament run. So now let's go down to the bottom right-hand bracket, and that'll conclude the first round matchups. Minnesota versus Fairfield. Yeah, I knew Minnesota was going to sweep away Fairfield. Minnesota, coming off of a big 4-set win over Penn State, they are just straight up good. They were just, and coming from the Big Ten Conference where you're straight up battle tested every night, you're pretty much guaranteed to win because you're so battle tested and you're facing talent all across the board, not just from your conference, not just from like the top of the conference, but from the middle of the conference as well. So that's pretty much that right there. Sorry, y'all. I thought I heard something. But anyway, back to this. Minnesota will play the winner of Iowa State and Creighton. Creighton managed to take down Iowa State. Creighton is over their little slip-up against St. John's in the Big East tournament. I knew Creighton was going to win, and more importantly, they're just battle-tested. They did have a few slip-ups against Villanova and that St. John's loss, but I think Creighton has gotten over that. They built the bridge and got over it, so it'll be Creighton and Minnesota in the second round. Now let's get on to UCF versus Florida State. I already went over this matchup yesterday. UCF took down Florida State in 5. They will play Florida, which Florida beat Alabama State in straight sets, which also was no real surprise. Then we have Western Kentucky versus Kennesaw State. I went over that matchup yesterday. Western Kentucky proved me wrong. I don't know what I was thinking picking Kennesaw State, but Western Kentucky, that team's really good, man. They swept away Kennesaw State, took them to the shed, no problem. They took on Louisville, also swept their matchup against Sanford, and Western Kentucky and Louisville faced each other in the second round. And UCSB, I went over this matchup. I went over the last two matchups yesterday. UCSB beat Texas State in 4 sets. That was their first NCAA tournament win since 2004, which is very impressive by the Gauchos. They will go on to face number 2, Texas, which did away with Albany in 4 sets. So that's your first round matchups. Congratulations to the 32 teams that made it to the second round. Here's your applause button. And as for the other 32 teams that lost, congratulations on a great season. Sometimes it just doesn't go your way, but, you had a phenomenal season. There's nothing to be sad about, especially when you're making it on this big of a stage. Some of these teams were even making their first ever NCAA tournament appearance. So that's still impressive. So hats off to the teams that made it to the NCAA tournament, and congratulations on a great season to the 32 teams that lost in the first round. Now let's move on to the second round matchups that happened yesterday. Texas A&M versus Rice. Texas A&M beat Rice in 4 sets. I was a little surprised that Texas A&M got the job done. At the same time, again, Texas A&M plays in the very good power conference that is the SEC, and they just Rice stole the first set from them. Rice was down 14-3 in the first set and then won at 28-26. Then Texas A&M got a big boost by winning the second set 32-30. Then Texas A&M just all the momentum was with them. Texas A&M just rolled past Rice in sets 3 and 4, and they're off to the Sweet 16. So big ups to Texas A&M. Oh, and shout out to H-Town Blake Henley. He's a big diehard Aggies fan. We see you. So, yeah, big ups to Texas A&M. They will face the winner of UCLA and Wisconsin tonight. If UCLA upsets Wisconsin, Texas A&M will have a home game in the Sweet 16, but if Wisconsin beats UCLA, then Texas A&M will travel to Wisconsin to take on the Badgers. Now let's go on to the other second-round matchup that happened, UCF versus Florida. This was no surprise that Florida won. Florida just straight up. Florida took down UCF, which, again, no surprise there. It was really no big surprise considering Florida's too good, man. They're just too good. Florida has all kinds of talent across, such as Thayer Hall. I believe her name was Kelsey Plemons, I think. Rachel Kramer, something like that. I just thought that, and they even have this talented 5'8" setter who even won a joust against a 6'8" middle blocker, which it's pretty impressive actually. So Florida to me was no surprise that they won. So Florida will advance to the Sweet 16 with a win. As for UCF, their season comes to an end, but they had a phenomenal season. So big ups to the Golden Knights or the Knights. So there's that. And now let's go into our other second round matchup between Western Kentucky and Louisville. Louisville, man, from the ACC, pulled off the upset against Western Kentucky, taking down Western Kentucky in 5 sets. I was very surprised that this actually happened. I thought Western Kentucky was better than that. I picked Western Kentucky to win that match, considering they had a very good first round matchup against Kennesaw State, and they were riding so much momentum. I could not believe that they lost. So Louisville, man, big ups to Louisville. One thing I think benefited Louisville is that they had, again, this just goes to show you that being in a good conference such as the ACC really helps you. Louisville is in the ACC, which is home to talented teams such as Pitt, Florida State, Georgia Tech, which should have made the NCAA tournament, but is playing in the NIVC. Boston College, which was up there as well, they also made the NIVC. And Notre Dame, which also made the NCAA tournament. So Louisville playing these Power 5, playing these tough conference opponents is really paying off. So big ups to Louisville, man, upsetting being the first team to pull an upset against a nationally seeded team. So a top 16 team at that. So we gotta give Louisville the applause button right there. So Louisville will advance to the Sweet 16, where they will play either number 2 Texas or UC Santa Barbara. And as for Florida, I forgot to mention, if Florida will advance to the Sweet 16, where they will play the winner of Creighton and Minnesota. If they play Creighton, Florida will be at home in the Sweet 16, but if they play Minnesota, they'll have to travel to Minnesota for the Sweet 16. Now this second round matchup, UCSB versus Texas. I was very impressed with this matchup. Texas, number 2 ranked Texas, the number 2 seed overall. Very talented team. But UCSB, man, first set, I saw this matchup. First set, UCSB and Texas were going back and forth. Then Texas was able to grind it out and get the first set victory over the Gauchos. But then Santa Barbara, something turned on for Santa Barbara. They won the second set quite nicely, 25-19. Then the third set, Santa Barbara just was clicking on all cylinders because of players like Lindsey Ruddins, Tallulah Froley, you name it. So And suddenly, Santa Barbara takes the third set 25-18, and everyone in that Texas gym is straight up stunned. They're thinking, oh my gosh, this Santa Barbara team could actually pull the upset. And I was very, very shocked. I was like, this could actually happen. A Big West team pulling off a huge upset over the nationally ranked number 2 seeded Texas Longhorns at Texas. No team has took 2 sets off of Texas at Texas. Not even Baylor. Not even Baylor, which was then ranked number 1 at the time against Texas. So this just goes to show you that UCSB really played with their heart, played all out. And this also goes to show you that teams that have nothing left to lose, are the most dangerous teams. Like Santa Barbara had nothing left to lose, but so much more to the game. If they lost that one, they had a great season because most people didn't expect them to go farther than the first round. But if they upset Texas, then that would have been cool. There would have been two upsets in the second round, and that would have been interesting to see where Louisville and Santa Barbara would end up. Maybe it would go by overall record or league conference record, or I don't know. Either way, I think maybe Louisville would probably have. I think Louisville would probably have that home matchup if Santa Barbara and Louisville were to meet up. So suddenly Santa Barbara's up 2-1 in the match, and everyone in the Texas gymnasium was starting to get a little worried. But then Logan Exelton, remember that name, Logan Exelton, a freshman outside hitter for the Longhorns. She just went to town against the Gauchos. She was literally carrying the team for Texas, and the Gauchos tried to make one final run. I think they got to as close as 25-22, but Texas ripped off the next 3 points and won that fourth set 25-20, and suddenly it was a fifth set. Everyone's favorite words in volleyball, set 5, where anything can happen, and absolutely anything and a lot did happen in the second set, or in the fifth set. So both teams went back and forth. Texas took an 8-7 lead at the side change, and that was kind of the game right there. Texas had all the momentum. Texas just started to rip off point after point. Santa Barbara just had no answer for Exelton. Lindsey Ruttins did all that she could to try to lead the Gauchos to victory, but it was just to no avail. Exelton was just way too strong for Exelton, and the other players on Texas was just too strong. And being at home really is a benefit for Texas, as the Longhorns avoided the upset and took down UCSB 3-2. That ended the dream season for UC Santa Barbara, as number 2 Texas will play Louisville at home in the Sweet 16 next week. So big ups to Texas. Sad moment that happened after the game, a sad but heartwarming moment. Lindsey Ruttins' younger sister Gigi, who plays with her on UC Santa Barbara, both hugged one another and just walked away with one another. It's a sad moment when you lose a tough matchup like that. You were up 2-1 in the match, and then you just suddenly it just falls apart for you, sadly. And that's the second time that happened this year for Santa Barbara, as they were up 2-1 against Hawaii, and then Hawaii managed to come back and win that one in 5 sets. So it just goes to show you that it's tough to win on the road. It really is tough to win on the road, especially in the NCAA tournament. It just really is. And that gym was super packed. It really was packed, and and for Santa Barbara fans, it's tough to when it comes to flying out to Texas. It's really tough. It's when you're basically going on the road to another state, it's basically you versus that state, whether it's Hawaii, whether it's Texas, you name it, that Texas gym was really packed. But big ups to Santa Barbara for a great season. I don't think anyone predicted that Santa Barbara was going to take Texas to 5. So big ups to them. So that's going to be that right there for the first few second round matches. Now let's get into the other second round matchups. The other second round matchups between the other second round teams. So without any further delay, let's get into those second round matchups. Starting with number 1 Baylor versus USC. Like I said, I got Baylor winning that one quite easily. I hate to pick against USC, but Baylor, they're just too good, man. They're just really good. You can't say anything better. Like, Yasonia Presley is gonna have a night against the Trojans. But if you never know. If USC plays together, they actually could pull the upset. But I'm banking on Baylor to win that one. Next up, we have Marquette versus Purdue. I got Purdue winning that one. Like I said, Purdue comes from the tough Big Ten conference. I don't think they'll let up against Marquette. They're on a tear as of late, so I wouldn't be surprised if Purdue. I wouldn't be surprised if Purdue won, but watch out for Marquette. Marquette's having another phenomenal year, so we'll see how it goes for them. As for number 9 Kentucky and Michigan, yeah, I'll go with Kentucky as well, considering Kentucky is just good. They're just good. This is probably one of their better teams. They're perennially good year in and year out, and I don't think Michigan has the Wolverines to take them down. They have number 8 Washington versus South Carolina. I'm going with Washington for this one. South Carolina was impressive in that upset over Colorado State, and yes, I'm going to call it an upset because Colorado State had a very, very, very good record, and they were ranked for the most part in the ABCA coaches poll. So I'm taking Washington to win over South Carolina. Then now let's go into the bottom left-hand bracket. We have number 5 Nebraska versus Missouri. I'm going to take Nebraska for this one. I think Nebraska, despite them having a young team, I think they will take down Missouri. But watch out for Missouri. The SEC does not play games, man. They are good. They are really good. Mizzo is here to play. San Diego versus Hawaii. This is a rematch from earlier this season. I'm going to pick San Diego for this one. Believe it or not, I think San Diego is playing their best volleyball, and I think they now know what to expect from Hawaii. I think they will get the job done. I wouldn't be surprised if it went 5, but I think San Diego upsets Hawaii. And it's tough to win at Stan Sheriff Center. And this is one of the more highly anticipated rematches between the Toreros and the Rainbow Wahine. So I'm picking the Toreros to upset Hawaii, which would mean San Diego would get another crack at Nebraska, which those two make the Sweet 16. Then we have UCLA versus Wisconsin. I love UCLA and their turnaround this season with Mac May and them upsetting Stanford. But I gotta go with Wisconsin. Wisconsin is just too good. This is probably their best team they've had in quite some time. So I'm taking Wisconsin over UCLA. I hate to see Mac May go out in the round of 32, but honestly, Wisconsin just has too many weapons, man. They're just too good. Then we have Stanford and Cal Poly. This should be another fun matchup, but I'm taking Stanford for this one. Stanford's just loaded with talent with Catherine Plummer, and Megan McClure has stepped up her gameplay at outside hitter. Madeline Gates has really done well at middle blocker, especially Audrina Fitzmaurice. Kendall Kipp has also done well as a freshman outside hitter. And Jenna Gray just continues to just set the offense, and Morgan Hens is just debatably one of the best liberos in the nation. I really should come up with a top five for like liberos and setters and outside hitters for this year. So who knows? Maybe I will do that. So possibly. It's possible. Next up, we have Utah versus BYU. This is going to be a really fun one. Utah against BYU. The Civil War, as Larry B once said. Ooh, you know what? It doesn't matter who wins this matchup, because whoever wins, unless Stanford gets upset, I can see it's going to be a great matchup between who faces Stanford. I'm taking BYU for this one. I'm going to say BYU beats Utah in 5. I was going to say Utah wins, considering Utah has been playing great volleyball as of late, and they've been battle tested in the Pac-12. But I think BYU is just on a mission. You know, they have only 4 seniors, but they are on a mission, especially Mary Lake, who is a senior libero. And who knows, maybe BYU will get that ever so delicious rematch with Stanford, and who knows. But if Utah upsets BYU, then Stanford, I would not be disappointed with Stanford versus Utah. So, but I'm picking BYU over Utah. I see that match going 5, because it's basically the Civil War. It's an interstate rivalry. So it doesn't get better than the Civil War versus the Civil War between the Cougars and the Utes. So next up, we've got Penn State versus Towson. No doubt in my mind, I'm picking Penn State. Penn State also has another libero that's very talented, being Kendall White, and you know their offense is also pretty good with players like Joni Parker. You know, you just can't say anything better about that team. So yeah, Penn State. You know, I got them winning quite nicely. So and Serena Gray has been serving well for the Nittany Lions. And like I said, Joni Parker and Gabby Blossom has done a really great job at setter. I think she's only a sophomore, so she's very, very good. And yeah, and Serena Gray is also up there as well. And if they play if Penn State plays hits like they did against Princeton, you know, it'll be over in a snap. So yeah, Penn State over at Towson. And just so you know, and fun fact for everybody, this is Penn State's 39th consecutive NCAA tournament appearance. And, you know, they're only one of 2 programs to compete in all 39. And Russ Rose is the only coach to lead a team in all 39. So big ups to Russ Rose, man. He is just phenomenal. He's coached at Penn State for 40 years, man. 40 years. That's unbelievable. You know, him and Karen Cheesum, who coaches at Texas State, are just phenomenal, man. You just can't say anything good about those old school coaches, you know. Still going strong. I'll save the applause button for later. Now, anyway, getting back to the situation at hand, Cincinnati versus Pittsburgh, or Pitt, whatever you want to call it. Either way, I'm taking Pitt. I want to see that Penn State-Pitt rematch. You know, it would be cool to have that. It would be cool to have that rematch, you know. But Pitt has to get past Cincinnati, and Cincinnati is really good when it comes to is just talented, man. You know, they're not to be overlooked, especially since they played in the somewhat tough American Athletic Conference. So yeah, I gotta go with Pitt. But I gotta go with Pitt over Cincy, so sorry, Cincy fans. Next up, we have number 7, Minnesota versus Creighton. Tough one, you know, but I'm taking Minnesota. I think Minnesota's just a little bit more consistent over Creighton. I think Creighton's just a tad bit inconsistent, and if it weren't for that St. John's loss, I probably would go with Creighton on any other day in the round of 32. But I'm going to take Minnesota for this one. I think Minnesota is just a cut above the rest. I think Minnesota, like I said, Minnesota is out on a mission to prove themselves that they are not the butt of everyone's joke. They are not going to choke, and they're going to prove to everyone that last year was kind of a fluke when they lost to Oregon. So then we have, Florida versus UCF. I picked Florida. As for my other first-round picks, or my other second-round picks, I picked Florida over UCF. I picked Western Kentucky over Louisville. I was wrong on that. I picked Texas over UCSB. I was right about that. And I picked Rice over Texas A&M, which I was wrong about that. Again, I was a little surprised that Rice lost that matchup against A&M, but, Texas A&M, man, they are for real. You don't mess with Texas. If you're listening, Blake Henley, go Aggies. Anyway, so as for that's pretty much it. Louisville and Texas are the first two teams that will match up against each other in the Sweet 16. I will get into the Sweet 16 a little bit later next week, but that will do it for the second round matchups and for my picks. Now let's get into the milestone. Now let's get into the milestone alert. All right. First up, in terms of milestone alert, with 378 digs, which is a freshman record at Arizona, Kamali Hayapo. I'm probably mispronounced that, but Kamali Hayapo with 378 digs, which is a new Arizona volleyball freshman record. So big ups to Kamali. Then we have Lindsay Ruddens, who passed the 1,000 dig mark to go along with her 1,929 plus kills, which makes her the all-time kill leader at UCSB, which is very phenomenal. And she's also been named to the Big West All-Academic 3 times. So big ups to Lindsay Ruddens of UC Santa Barbara. Then we have Madison Lilly, who is now the all-time assist leader at Kentucky in the 25-point rally era, scoring era, with 3,824 assists. And she actually passed Morgan Berggren, who had 3,814 assists from 2012 who had 3,814 assists from 2012 to 2015. So big ups to Madison Lilly. Then we have Coach Riley Alvey, who got her 200th career coaching victory, which is very cool for Cincinnati. Coach Alvey got her 200th victory for Cincinnati, so big ups to her and Cincinnati volleyball. Could she get win number 201 against Pitt? Who knows? Then we have Danny Drews of Utah, who set the record for single-season kills. So big ups to Danny. If she has a big game against BYU, Utah could be seen in the Sweet 16. Then we have Bree Doherman, who is the all-time digs leader at Utah, which is really awesome. Liberos deserve some love too. Then we have UCF's coach, Todd Dagenais. I'm probably mispronouncing that. Todd Dagenais, who is the all-time winningest coach in UCF volleyball history with 237 wins. So big ups to Coach Todd. And yeah, congratulations to all of the milestone alert people, coaches and players. Let's give you all the round of applause button. And with that is pretty much going to do it. We're just going to recap the NIVC. Once again, the round of the second round has been decided or has already been finalized. South Dakota beat Central Michigan in 4 sets. UNLV beat Kansas City in 4 sets. UT Arlington beat UTSA in 5 sets. Sam Houston State beat Houston in 4 sets. Santa Clara beat Long Beach State in 5 sets, which made me sad, but that's okay. Tulsa beat UC Davis in 4 sets. Wyoming beat Northwestern State in 3 sets. They swept them. Weber State beat Boise State in 4 sets. Georgia Tech beat Alabama A&M in... Oh, no, Georgia Tech and Alabama A&M haven't faced each other yet. Wait, hello? And the site crashed. So all I can tell you is that Tulsa beat Santa Clara in 4 sets at Long Beach. So yeah, I was invited to go to that match. Okay, the site refreshed. I'm getting all this my information off of the women's NIVC.com website. So Georgia Tech beat Alabama A&M in straight sets. Troy beat North Carolina AT in straight sets. Liberty and LaSalle have to face each other. High Point and Morehead State have to face each other. That matchup is tonight. Bowling Green beat Purdue of Fort Wayne in 4 sets. TCU took down Miami of Ohio in 5 sets. Colgate took down Boston College in 4 sets. And Tulane took down New Hampshire in 4 sets. And I was actually wrong. It's not just South Dakota also swept away. Now for the second round, South Dakota took down UNLV to make it to the Elite 8. This is a 32-team bracket, not a 64-team bracket, so round 3 is basically the Elite 8. UT Arlington swept away Sam Houston State. To make it to the Elite 8, they will face South Dakota. Like I said, Tulsa beat Santa Clara at Long Beach State. Tulsa will advance to the Elite 8. Weber State took down Wyoming in 5 sets, and they'll face Tulsa in the Elite 8. And TCU took down Bowling Green in the second round in straight sets, and they will advance to the Elite 8. So, fun fact, TCU is actually the only team they and Long Beach State and TCU were both under 500 when it comes to making the NIVC. But I guess their RPIs were high enough to get them into the NIVC, because you have to have a record above 500, or you have to win a conference, or you just have to have a bunch of teams decline. Like, I think some teams kind of declined, like Cal and Pepperdine. I'm not entirely sure. You never know with some of these coaches. I can't really speak for some of these coaches on why certain teams didn't go into the NIVC. Sometimes they just don't want to partake in that just because they want to partake in the NCAA tournament, not the NIVC, because the NIVC is basically just a consolation tournament. So there's that, but TCU and Long Beach State both had records under 500, and Long Beach almost pulled off the win over Santa Clara, and then TCU, came in with 9 wins, and now they're at 11 wins, and they're off to the Elite 8. So big ups to TCU, man. As for the other second round matchups, Georgia Tech will face Troy at Georgia Tech. And we still have yet to hear from Liberty and LaSalle and High Point and Morehead State, who face each other tonight, and the winner of those matchups will face each other tomorrow at Liberty. Liberty is the host site for those matchups. So there's that. So, and one more fun fact. I want to say this is true. UCSB was the only school in the NCAA women's volleyball tournament to not have a football team. I could be wrong, but UCSB does not have a football team, and they were the only school in the NCAA tournament to not have in the NCAA women's volleyball tournament to not have a football team. Everyone else had one. I'm going to double check that, but I'm almost 100% certain that they they're the only school in the NCAA tournament to not have a football team. Everyone else has a football team. Unless I am sadly mistaken, and if I'm mistaken, I will correct myself. But either way, that's going to do it for this episode of Set Point. Thank you to everyone for tuning in. I'm sorry if you were tuning in earlier and then you were unable to tune in. Lots of stuff happened, but that's besides the point. But as my boy Larry B would say, cue the music, because we're out of here. Like I said, this is your boy, Teran Rodriguez. I will be back possibly on Monday for another edition of Set Point. And when I will recap all the second round matchups. Until then, have a great weekend and enjoy some women's volleyball over the weekend.